What's up, and thank you so much for watching this video. I'm Skyler from Culture Shock. You can find us and find these records at cultureshockshop.com, or you can visit our store, Culture Shock Clothing and Records, right here in Rockford, Illinois. I'm the owner of that store. I'm also a huge music collector, and I've been into music and records, especially vinyl, for almost as long as I can remember. It's always been a thing for me. So right now, this is part 2 of my video for the week. I did a part 1 for our Vinyl Happy Hour weekly vinyl series, where we kind of dig into and dive into and break into some special releases and other things that are either coming out for the week or reissues or brand new spanking new releases. Tonight, I had some coffee already for my first video. I'm getting a little Gentleman Jack. Here's some Jack Daniels to cool me down for some cool jazz for my next video. So if you're watching this, be sure I'll put a link in the bottom too to part 1 so you can go and watch our other video as well. That one kind of talked more about some 90s and 2000s rock and metal and indie store exclusives. I'm going to talk about some great jazz records tonight, some stuff, a couple things for my personal collection, but really more about what we're getting into the store, what's getting released and reissued, and talk about a lesser known tenor sax player who's just a beautiful person, Wayne Shorter. Wayne Shorter, I think, probably doesn't come off the top of a lot of people's heads who are into jazz, unless you get a little deeper, but he should be one of the top names that I think everybody recognizes. Just an awesome sax player, seems like a really cool dude, really kind of chill, just brings a great vibe to the people around him and to the music that he plays. I kind of started at a strange space with him, kind of like right in the middle. The Schizophrenia, that's this great Wayne Shorter album. It's a 70s piece though. And also tonight, I'm not just going to talk about Blue Note. This is an original release, our 70s release, not some of the earlier classic Blue Note era. But I remember getting this album thinking, oh man, this is going to be a trip. This is going to be freaking far out. Crazy free jazz or something. You've got this kind of psychedelic LSD looking tripped out double saxophone picture, and I was like, this looks to me, in my mind, I still think it's on the Impulse record label for some reason. It just has the look of it and a little bit of the sound of that, kind of more the John Coltrane, which he also was an admirer of John Coltrane. But a lot of people are going to know Wayne Shorter, and how I actually know Wayne Shorter is going to be from Bitches Brew. He was in the Miles Davis lineup there of that later era for quite a few years, played a lot with Miles live, did a lot of great improvisations and a lot of live music, but some studio albums as well. Man, this guy's just a cool guy, and actually just kind of reading up on him and seeing interviews and talks, he's still one of the living legends of jazz too, who played through the 50s and 60s, great era of jazz. Doesn't seem like he got very druggy or anything either, so maybe that's led to a longer life. A lot of guys, obviously a lot of rock musicians, a lot of jazz artists definitely dabbled into a lot of drugs. That was just a big part of the culture and a lot of other ways of coping. But he actually kind of found a kind of higher calling, and he's Buddhist, I believe, also. So he kind of brings this kind of cool vibe to the people that he jams with and plays with. He's written a lot of stuff. He will play some standards and play some other people's music. But unlike a lot of jazz artists, he does play a lot of his originals. But I just kind of wanted to show off the Schizophrenia. That's kind of one out of my personal collection. I've been really digging back into jazz, especially as I start to collect and have a lot more rock records and things like that I like. But like I said, I started with, here's some of the live stuff too that you'll find that Wayne Shorter played on with Miles Davis. And of course, Bitches Brew is the biggest one. But just recently, I kind of went back to find Introducing Wayne Shorter. This was actually on the Prestige record label originally. This is an import, like, it's one of the Dalton imports or whatever that we get in at the store at Culture Shock. It's the only way I could find a copy of it. Originals are pretty scarce, pretty hard to find. But this is a 59 recording. You'll also notice, though, that there's some great guys playing here. You got Lee Morgan on trumpet, Wayne Shorter, of course, playing tenor sax, Wynton Kelly on keys, Paul Chambers bass, and Jimmy Cobb or James Cobb on the drums. Those guys obviously also were a big part of the Jazz Messengers and Art Blakey's Jazz Messengers and a lot of the Blue Note recordings. This album sounds great. So they claim it to be 180 gram HQ virgin vinyl. So the pressing quality, everything sounds great. We don't know. I don't know exactly. It's hard to find out sometimes if this is from a digital source or an analog source. This is nice thick vinyl too with the polylined inner sleeve. Beautiful sounding pressing. This is his first album introducing Wayne Shorter. So it's a little more of your more hard bop jazz classics. It's not too far out or anything, and so just a great listening album. But he does Mac the Knife is the final song, but the other 5 tracks on here are his originals. I do wish that their labels, kind of like a lot of other reissues, use the original. I think it was the New Jazz or Prestige label. Originals are pretty scarce. I've actually never had one. So I do wish they had that on the label, but that's okay. They made their own label. More importantly, they made a nice jacket, nice gatefold. Oh yeah, did I open this even? Cool photos on the inside here. Nice gatefold. I'm more happy that the jacket looks nice and that the vinyl quality and the sound of it is really nice. There is another Blue Note reissue we got in. This is another, I think Juju's the other one of his albums that I think are the best. But Night Dreamer with Lee Morgan again, also on trumpet. McCoy Tyner this time playing piano. Reginald Workman, Elvin Jones, another great drummer who I know I had worked with Coltrane as well. This is one of the classic era Blue Note reissues. So cool to see that one getting reissued. Like I said, he played a lot with Miles Davis. And what's cool is the man's still alive, still been playing. It's the Wayne Shorter Quartet, I believe. Still doing his thing. He has kind of a Latin feel, actually, on some of his jazz songs. Quartet seems really cool. Hopefully they'll maybe even still be playing here once some of the lockdown. So again, I talked about a variety of jazz, some of the stuff that's out there, and some of that Impulse Jazz label and stuff like that. Plus you've got people like Sun Ra. This man took jazz from outer space and put it onto vinyl and made live recordings. This is a cool reissue. I'm trying to get the year for you. I forgot. 73 was when the original one came out. And this was on the ABC Impulse label. So, like I said, that Schizophrenia album, I originally thought, oh, this is going to be like this, like kind of far out jazz. It's not, though. It's definitely a little different from your standard, all your hard bop and stuff. But Sun Ra, now this is far out. It's hard to explain. He's just kind of, interpreting music without, it's like speaking a different language. He's definitely an interesting character, and he had a lot of cool jazz and just kind of far out ways of interpreting music. Originals of his stuff are also quite hard to find. So this is Astro Black. This is 73 reissue. I love how it's got the little obi strip they call them with it. So this just got reissued. I did get some more Blue Note stuff in. I just kind of want to talk about some of the less classic and less conventional releases. Donald Byrd's Ethiopian Nights. This is maybe a 71 piece. So this reissue is in one of the analog mastered pieces that they're putting out from the 80th anniversary set. But I love to see how most of your originals only have 4 or 5 players, and they always list out everybody who's playing on there. So this one you've got trumpet, sax, trombones, vibes, 2 guitars, 3 guitars, 2 pianos, you got bass, organ, extra drummers. This one has kind of that Ethiopian feel. This has got kind of this interesting mixture of world music mixed in with that great funky, jazz that Donald Byrd likes to pop off his trumpet. He just kind of mixes in with all these instruments and kind of puts his little tones here and there. It's just a really cool album if you want to step outside. I always tell people, Kind of Blue and all those classic jazz albums you should have, but you should definitely see how jazz, like the Schizophrenia album, like I said, there's stuff with guitar, with organ, there's rock, there's funk jazz, there's soul jazz, there's spiritual jazz. In a way, some of the stuff kind of goes more in a spiritual way, and jazz, to me, started as a spiritual thing. This is how even some of your big band music and stuff were using church instruments and church players, people who played in the original churches, and took that spiritual music and kind of just started, tinkering around with it or playing it off hours and off times and experimenting with it, taking their stuff home. Some of these guys you read about or hear about months and years before they started playing together, how something worked out for them and how it came together for them. Wayne Shorter, even, interesting story. He was just a truck driver, so he was just working a day job or whatever, and he had put his sax up, it was under his bed or whatever, somebody got it for him. He played, and then he auditioned for some bands, and he was ready to call it quits almost, and then Maynard Ferguson called him up from an audition. He went to play with his big band in Canada, and that didn't jive with him, I guess. He was too blah, too boring. And then he hooked back up with Art Blakey and ended up, I think he was in Philadelphia and moved to New York and got in with those guys. And the amount of months and years these guys practice to do their stuff and just kind of interpret music, even though there's no lyrics, there's no singing, you get to hear their soul. So it's really cool that a lot of this stuff has been preserved. A lot of things, if you've been watching my previous videos, we talk about what's so cool about some of this music is this is taken from the original analog master tapes, like the actual studio reels and recordings that have been preserved, and they actually remaster them, replate them, reissue them. These are pressed in Germany, actually, this analog series here from Blue Note. Just a great sounding album. I mean, I don't think you could even find an original that would sound as good as these, you know? I mean, obviously I'm looking for originals. I love to have them, but it's great that they're reissuing. So like I said, let's not just talk about Blue Note. Let's throw in a couple other things, because there are a lot of other great jazz labels and labels that did, you know, a lot of jazz. One of the biggest audiophile labels that, you know, we people think about is probably Mobile Fidelity Sound Lab. This is kind of more of a minimal jazz piece. This is Bill Evans' Jim Hall piece. You've got your piano, or yeah, your piano and guitar. You know, it's kind of more of a stripped down thing. The Undercurrent one, I can't wait to bust this open and listen to it though. The Mobile Fidelity Sound Lab, they put their big strip here on the top. This is their silver label series, and they even numbered them. So this is all like mastered and made as like a high quality pressing, you know. I can't wait to check it out. So it's cool to see that. The Tone Poet series is a different series of the Blue Note label, and they're actually reissuing these as really super thick gatefolds, really nice thick old jackets. More photos on the inside, also pressed from the analog masters. We've been selling out of records actually since the pandemic began, especially our jazz. Like, everybody was trapped at home and wanted to get something to help them out, I think, including myself. I've been wanting to listen to more minimal or jazz or just something chill, because it kind of balanced me out from listening to Anthrax and metal and everything else too sometimes. This was one of the first ones that actually came out a couple years ago. We had been sold out of these for over a year, and I just finally was able to get some more in. Stanley Turrentine Hustlin'. This is also one of the lesser known pieces, but he's playing with Shirley Scott she's playing organ on this one, and Kenny Burrell guitar. You've got some other great players. Probably one of the lesser known Blue Note pieces, but you should definitely experiment and try this out. Great sounding album, great sounding pressing. So Stanley Turrentine, right? Yeah, had also worked with Kenny Burrell on Midnight Blue. So you probably have very familiar with this. This kind of stands up there, it seems like, with, like I always say, the Love Supremes and other, you know, classic albums like that. This one has, you know, a little bit of a bluesy or jazz feel too, and you've got the cool kind of very just chill, relaxed guitar from Burrell playing on it. But yeah, I would say this is just one that a lot of people probably haven't heard and doesn't pop up a lot. So I would definitely check those out. But Blue Note also, they just put out Norah Jones Live. We sold out of them already. They're already pre-booked they're coming out tomorrow. So we'll talk about that later. But Blue Note does have a lot of modern stuff and a lot of other jazz artists. We talk a lot about this. 55 to 65 was the classic piece of that. Motorcycles are making some jazz out here, I guess. So anyway, this is a really interesting piece. This is actually the 10-year anniversary. It comes in this really cool slip case of the Greg Foat band. Oh, I feel so bad. I just forgot too. I don't know if they're Swedish. Oh, dang, I forgot. But anyway, he's a great, this is a multi-instrumentalist, you know, pianist, organist, harpsichord, things like that. But you've got drums, congas, all sorts of stuff, saxophones, of course. This Greg Foat group, wow, this is cool stuff. Definitely, it's very a modern European feel, but they definitely pay homage to that sound of the original jazz that inspired a lot of jazz musicians, especially in Europe. So this is cool. This came out, what, 2010, 2011, I guess. This is the 10-year anniversary of it. I love the art. I actually I thought it might be a gatefold, but it's got this very, what do you want to say that is? It reminds me of some like robotic animal, some kind of Disney movie or something. It's just really cool, futuristic looking. But I was like, oh, that'd be so cool if it opened up in a gatefold, but that's cool. You've got the players listed on the back, kind of like great jazz albums do. They were talking about, where's Gothenburg at? Oh yeah, it is Swedish. Okay, so they're Swedish, okay. There's a little insert, you know, or inlay with a kind of story from Greg Foat in there and some photos of the band kind of playing and recording. Just a great sounding album. This is really different though, and it rocks actually in a way. So this definitely has more of a rock influence. There's a lot of good heavy drums and guitars mixing in with all the jazz. their albums too, they're pretty pricey usually. Man, I've seen a couple of theirs going in the hundreds of dollars already, and they're not even old, like some of these old original jazz albums from the 50s and 60s. It's just they probably have pressed less and their demand has crept up. There's no rhyme or reason as to why records go out of print or what becomes valuable. I can never put my finger on it. But really, I just want to show off that there's a huge variety of different jazz players from all around the world, and modern stuff too, that is definitely worth checking out. This one, of course, I like it because it's got a little darker feel to it. It definitely gets a little eerie sounding in some places. And they're talking, you know, the story talks about how there wasn't much sunlight during that time of the year whenever they were recording, I think. So they're kind of trapped in the dark a little bit and stuff like that. So that comes across in the recordings, you know, that definitely had an influence on the songs. Check that out. We only have a couple copies. This is an import. Super nice, shiny, glossy gatefold jacket. It actually reminds me a lot of those Tone Poet series, how they did nice packaging. And then let's talk about something real quick. This is the dinner party. This is very different. So if you are open or have leanings to the hip hop and DJ side of things, but also like your jazz, your R&B feel, this is a really cool artistry experiment from Terrace Martin, who's like a multi-instrumentalist producer, Robert Glasper, who's actually done some more new age jazz and stuff like that, Kamasi Washington, who I think a lot of us probably heard him. He's got some far out jazz, and he of course played on the Kendrick Lamar albums and stuff like that, and Ninth Wonder, another great hip hop producer, beat maker. So this is a cool kind of an EP from these guys, and it's just cool to see that kind of hip hop mixture, R&B, jazz put together, mostly instrumental, like I said. I just saw that on Record Store Day. They're actually going to be putting this out, a remix or a different part 2 of it with vocals, and you'll have Snoop Dogg and some other people on there. So that's cool. I just kind of wanted to point this out and say that, kind of like I was talking about schizophrenia, to free jazz, to hard bop, to, you know, hip hop even, like, a lot of these guys have sampled or made beats and used a lot of classic funk, soul, jazz to make music. And then jazz has responded and added funk sounds and stuff to their own music. So it's cool to see that back and forth. I did also notice Record Store Day is going to be releasing some really great audiophile jazz pieces too. So let's put the link in the description here. If you open up the description of the video, so we'll have links to these records that are for sale in the blues and jazz section. We also have our staff picks. You can check some of the Record Store Day stuff, although that's not for sale on our website yet. You can get it on our website if it's available, if it doesn't sell in store on our website later that day. That's June 12th and July 17th. But we are getting fresh records. This is just a little tiny sample of some of the releases that we just got in for the week. So please subscribe to the channel, watch our videos. We'll kind of do a deeper dive into some records every single week for Vinyl Happy Hour. And we plan to do some additional videos, you know. I'd love to talk more about some stereo gear with you and kind of show off some more, maybe some albums from my personal collection and some box sets too. So I'm looking forward to doing that. So thank you so much for watching. Appreciate it. Cheers.